All right, welcome back. Decision Games, War in Europe, Scenario 2, The Fall of France, 1940. We are starting now turn 2, or the second week of the invasion. And as you can see, the Germans have successfully blown through the Ardennes and pretty much exploited a good distance here into France. And this is a moment of decision with this second turn. They could try and storm Paris. The Allies have tried to put enough units up here to screen it, or they can pretty much do what was done historically, a sickle cut, and come right across here and trap all of these units. But one of the concerns we're going to see too is German supply. They run a real risk of outrunning their supply, and right now the French have succeeded in at least interdicting. There is supply flowing through here because of these units here, but any German infantry trying to follow up aren't going to get very far. So it's still the mechanized troops out here that are doing most of the work, but there is a lot of them. So let's go ahead and get started. This one may be a long recording. And the first one we have is the tactical air commitment phase. And actually, let's look at the Allied turn marker because something big happens this turn. We are now in turn 2. And the rest of the British Expeditionary Force crosses the channel. 3 infantry and 1 armored division. They set up in England per the normal British reinforcement rules, and then they will use no naval transport to come across the channel. The question is where? A lot of ports here, and there are things Germans can do to mess with that process. Obviously not naval, but we will see there is air power they can do. And actually, that's our first phase here, the tactical air commitment. And again, disclaimers on this one. I can't really play it like it was, against another player, bluffing, putting forces here. So I'm kind of using just basic guidelines. And so it's maybe not the best strategy, but I'll kind of try and think what would they do in real life. So with that said, let's look at the German placement. Oh, got a lot of lines there. So they lost 2 last turn, so they're down to 26. And I did read, also this is an opportunity to exercise the rules. So we've kind of done air superiority before. We know that the Allies have 9, so the Germans have put 10 into air superiority. But this time they've done something different. They've done 5 here over in air sea. And just looking at these rules, that's interesting. That's almost like another air superiority, because whatever the Allies put in air sea, they're going to do combat like in air superiority. And then after that, they can do port suppression. There's a chart for that. We'll see that. And then they're part of sea move interdict, which also is pretty powerful, to slow down the British coming across the channel. Actually, it's going to force the British to come somewhere out of range, probably down here in the Brittany Peninsula here, just to be out of the 12 hex range of German air power. So we'll see that here soon too. What did the Allies do? Not very creative here. Again, disclaimer. So the Royal Air Force, I flipped that, didn't I? Okay. Well, there's 5, there's 4, it's the same. My intent was to have the Royal Air Force protect the channel and the rest of the air forces not go up to take on air superiority. Just trying to figure out some kind of guideline on how to do this, since this should be actually simultaneous. So this is the way I played it. So we are not going to have an air superiority battle. We will have an air sea, 5-on-5. And then these units will remain. The Germans aren't doing anything by sea, so these units will be done. But then these units will be available for port suppression. So, and I can pretty much sum up what I did. I don't know if I have the rolls in another one, but I stacked them all up, and basically nobody rolled a 1 in 10 die rolls, which is kind of shocking. It's probably the Vassal die roller here, but if we look at the chart we use, this is the one we use, and let's just look at this air superiority. I'm unpacking this game. It's actually growing on me. It's an interesting system, mainly from the 70s and 80s, and it's got some interesting stuff going on here. So if we go to the air phase, just to unpack that, let's see, air movement phase. Yeah, I think we want the combat. Hold on a second. Okay, I think I found it. See superiority. Both players simultaneously commit air points to see superiority. Player does this by moving any number of air points, yada yada yada. During the air combat phase, those air points in C supporting may be eliminated. See 13.2. And 13.2 is the actual describing how you do air superiority combat. So I interpret that as saying I apply the same rules for air superiority that I do initially for sea superiority. Air opponents committed to, let's see, air committed to sea superiority missions may perform two separate types of attacks: port suppression during the joint air war turn, which I'll do, and then air sea interdiction during the enemy. So they're doing a lot. If I'm interpreting these rules right, they'll fight the initial air superiority battle, then they'll be available for port suppression, and then they're available for sea move interdiction, which is pretty powerful too. So like I said, when I did the rolls though, nobody rolled a 1. So actually nobody from either group was shot down, and there was nobody contesting German air superiority, so nobody was shot down there also. Yeah, and real quick, here's attack air combat. Like I said, 10 die rolls, nobody rolled a 1, which one-on-one, that's what you need to destroy the opposition. So nobody shot down over the English Channel. And then it does say that they can now move to port suppression, can't commit more than 5. And then they can be shifted to air interdiction. And the attack has to be within 12 hexes of a supplied hex. And so for the heck of it, just to exercise the rules, I go ahead and do an attack on Le Havre here. And I do it with all 5 air points. Again, so if we look at the chart here, oh, here's sea superiority. Yeah, we got port suppression and air sig interdiction. Table's the same, so with 5, as long as you don't roll a 6, you're going to disrupt. And in the case of port suppression, it makes a major port a minor port, and suppressed minor ports may only be used as embarkation for sea movement, not debarkation. So in theory, what's being done here is the Brits cannot land their troops here, which isn't a concern because when you continue on with the rules, they move into enemy sea movement interdiction. And this is pretty powerful if you read these rules. 5 per attack. They can pretty much attack anybody who moves in that area. Each airpoint may attack as many units as pass within range. So if anybody comes within 12 hexes of here, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You see we're down in Brittany now, the Brittany Peninsula. That means Cherbourg is interdicted too. So, and they get attacked by potentially 5 air units. Each air unit may. Yeah, no more than 1 air sea unit. Maybe against a unit as long as it remains in a single air front. So if I'm reading that right, that means with 5 air points, that means I'm on this table again. So there's a 1 in 5 chance that anybody transiting will get, in our case, turned into battle groups, if it's a unit that doesn't go to battle group. So basically, this is what interdicts the sea movement, actually, not necessarily the port suppression. So probably now the Brits are going to be coming in here. Maybe they can leverage rail movement to get them to the final battle here in France, but we'll see. So this was mainly to exercise the rules, but I have a feeling that this was unnecessary. I would actually want the Brits to move and have a 1 in 5 chance of being reduced. But effectively, those units, the Luftwaffe over the Channel is forcing the Brits with their troop transports to take the safe route, we'll see on their turn, and probably land down here, which I think is what happened in real life. I'll have to check. There was a second wave of British troops beyond what was originally there, and they actually had a second evacuation after this first part of the battle. So that gets us through the air phase, and ultimately what does that leave us with for the Axis? Now we've got, looks like 10 close air support and or interdiction units available for attacks. So that's the end of the air phase. Here we go, we come back here. Then we can move into the reinforcement and replacement phase. All right, at least in the scenario, that's driven by turn chart for each side. We're doing the Germans, so turn 2, they get 3 infantry replacements and 1 AP replacement. So the air point, I think I just placed. Not going to be used for anything this turn, but it at least replaces one of the units from last turn that was lost. So that's 27 air points. And then I think it said 3 infantry replacements, and replacements are interesting. I can't use all 3. It basically says for every 3 or fraction of 3 above 3 I can burn one air point. So for example, if I had 1 infantry replacement point. So if I have 3 infantry replacement ports, I can use one of them. If I have 6, I can use 2 of them. If I have 7, there's a fraction, I could use 3 of them. So right now, Germans only have 3 infantry replacement points, and I think I end up using one of them. We'll see that during the init move here second. So at least for the Germans, they get 1 air point, gets placed for use next turn. And I believe I flipped one of these 1.5s here back to full strength. And that will be their reinforcement phase. So, and then we move into the initial phase. And this is, of course, the moment of truth. What are the Germans going to do? I'm going to play with my pen program here now. Basically, I looked at this. Actually, if we hide the pieces, well, we'll see. Right now, these guys, they've got a problem, obviously, of being cut off. Let's hide the pieces. Yeah, they've got no port, at least here. There's no port here for them. But the nearest port, of course, is the famous Dunkirk. There, that's hide pieces. There it is. Calais. We got Dunkirk and Calais. Those are potential supply points for the Brits, at least, for the Commonwealth. It's a lot tougher for the French. I think they only have 3 supply hexes in the game. One of them is Paris, and then I think I have to look them up. 2 of them are down here, so ports aren't going to help them. But here's the key, these 2 ports. In real life, the Germans drove here and paused at Dunkirk, which then allowed the Brits to escape. So if I'm going to do the German thing, if I'm going to do the historical thing, the Germans are going to drive kind of like this. Okay, so that's the sickle cut. We'll see that. Now the other thing is they can maybe use all these forces to try and take on Paris. I did some analysis. They're not going to get there. There's no overruns here. They'll get an attack, maybe advance here, but that's as far as they'll get because these guys will probably retreat here. They can't. Well, in theory, they could get here and prevent this guy. It's going to be tough, okay? And the other problem is if they commit these forces to drive on Paris, this will allow and these units are scary in supply, the British Commonwealth troops. It'll allow them, with their speed to drive and be part of the battle here. So, just like in real life, phase 1 of the battle is to deal with these forces. And then we'll see phase 2 will be to take Paris. And per the victory conditions, French have to end up being Vichy. And to do that, they have to take Paris. And I think the way it works is, and then roll the die each turn the Germans have Paris. But you add 1 to it for every 3 Commonwealth units on the board. So, for example, I think right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we're going to get some more. So we're almost +4 or +5. So it's really hard to form Vichy when there's a strong Commonwealth presence still in France. So The double effect of doing this along with reducing forces is hopefully we can eliminate all these Commonwealth forces, which will then greatly reduce the die roll modifier. So this is what I decided on. I don't see the taking Paris coup and letting these guys react as a smart idea. So we'll go ahead and load up the initial move and show you what that looks like here. Let me shift back to, okay, that's gone. Go back to cursor. Let me load the other one up. All right, I left the movement trails in place, and this is a bit confusing, but we can see what the Germans did here. And the big event was they drove down here. This is the initial move, okay? Now I was playing with the supply issue too. 1, 2, 3, it's basically 10 hexes from a major supply point, which would be this railhead here. I can trace through unit zones of control. It's considered infantry movement. So rivers and broken don't cost anything for infantry, which I find interesting. Let's see, here it is. Yeah, river hex site, +1 for mech. No effect for non-mech. Broken, 1 MP for both. So if we're using infantry, the rivers don't matter. So I can get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just barely there. So they do kind of got a range here, but they can outrun their supply coming around here. So we do see a number of priorities here. We do see coming across here, they're going to, and we got a mech move after this, so these aren't final positions. But they are successfully cutting, they've basically cut off all these units. Especially after they attack Dunkirk, not going to make the mistake of real life. These guys are going to attack Dunkirk, and then you'll see in the mech move, then they're going to come over here and overrun and take both these ports and probably move up to the Somme as a defensive line here, which will basically take away the British resupply and evacuation capabilities, unlike real life. But they also want to try and reduce this stub right here so they can, start closing in and getting better supply lines going forward. And then we got the same thing here. They're trying to open the door. This is basically just to open the door to let the infantry rush through without paying ZOC costs. Won't be this turn. And then up here, we got to get rid of this concentration. The Germans do. And again, all these attacks are out of supply units, judged at the moment of combat. So they are half their combat strength. Okay. And let's see. And then all the horde of infantry just starts trying to move through the hole. And here we're just kind of covering. Very unlikely the French are going to attack out of the Maginot Line at this point, because last turn we see the French are basically stripping all the extra units out to try and move up the left flank and come in front of Paris. These guys in the Paris area is going to make it a tough nut to crack if they can get there. But the short-term goal, let's close and isolate these guys, and then we continue to do the hammer and the anvil here and just let these infantry units reduce and destroy these when they're out of supply, and then we'll have the bulk of our mech forces to do whatever after this turn. So that's that. Let's move on to the next phase, the combat phase. All right, here we see the actual combats, their odds, and I even put the die rolls down. Germans are on the awesome chart 1. Yeah, this one right here. And again, I mean, it's moderate weather, 1940. Yeah, no, I think I did this right. No, moderate weather, clear. Okay, this is where they are. This is determining it. So that's why we're over here in this, in there. We're definitely in table. And if we look at 11 to 1 and 10 to 1, without a negative modifier, 11 to 1 and 12 to 1 are assured victories. And so, oh, I did a 10 to 1, but yeah, there I did commit the air unit. But this one I didn't commit any air units because it's automatic. This one, 10 to 1, I did commit. And that'll potentially get us a 1/2 exchange on the wrong roll. We'll see that. I guess I need to roll that, but and then these we have the rolls. So let's take a look at the results here. Well, here's a 9-1. This is a big one. Take Dunkirk. 9-1. +1, get a 5. 9-1 on 5 is DE, and the unit doesn't have a battle group. It's gone. You'll see these units don't advance after combat. They'll wait until the mech move and then overrun and then spread out. So that'll do the trick there. Let's see. Working around here, we have a. I'm going to have to move this out of the way. This one, we basically had units here, and these rivers in France are obnoxious. And I'm playing it if you're attacking across the river, you're halved, whether or not there's other units not attacking across it, because I never saw in the rules if any attacking units are on the same, not across the river, then all the units are full strength. I did not see that in the rules anywhere, so. And that's a big one. So these units are halved, these units are halved, well, whoopee. He's only there to keep the supply line. But these units aren't, and that's a key place where the attack comes from, and therefore we get the 9-1. Wow, get this a little over. So let's see. This one we had the 9-1 on 4, and that's a DE. This one we have a 6-1 on 5, and we're going to see in the next turn a half exchange. So Germans take losses here. Then we have a 4-1 on 5, which is a full-blown exchange. So 2 infantry units are going to be reduced. And the way the exchange works is you total the combat factors, no modifiers, and that's how much should be lost. So with 3, 6, 9, 12, I'm going to reduce 2 units. And then this attack against the British motorized, 6-1 on 4, and that's a half exchange also, I think. Yep, so we're taking losses. We're going to take infantry losses along here. No attacks here, again, mainly because of these rivers everywhere. And these units are just too strong, even out of supply, these concentrations. So, but the whole goal here with those results is the Germans are going to be able to at least move up this way some. And all the French units are going to be eliminated. This guy's going to go to a battle group and probably fall back here. So those are the results there. Yeah, and they did their cleanup here, and they widened things here, and they're widening things here too. So next turn, the infantry will be able to move through. They won't be able to engage yet because they don't have enough movement points to enter Zoc. So by the following turn, they can start attacking, and we'll see how that is. So let me show you what the combat results look like. Yep, here we go. A little messy, but with all the lines. Guess I could make those go away. There we go. Well, then you don't see how they moved, but here's the unit that fell back. So the Germans moved up, leaving behind the infantry that took losses. Here we have 2 infantry taking losses. Here we have another infantry. But basically they're able to now close up, and now the supply line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now it does give us the range we need to continue our exploitation here. And we do see these guys did not advance after combat, but all these guys did. The cavalry units now are gone, moving the 6.5s up. The 3.4s are out. The Panzers actually withdrew, advanced after combat away, but that's just to get them out of the French zone of control, so they've got total freedom of movement. They don't have to pay the Zoc cost during the mech move. So I got to get rid of that 11-1. All right, so that is the combat. Let's continue on to the mech move. Let me pause. Okay, here's a mech move, and I thought about it a lot, and got aggressive. Pushing the Panzers and Panzer Grenadiers as far forward as they go, and I'm also not concentrating them. I'm spreading them out. The main reason is it's trying to slow down these units from responding. I mean, we're still trusting the fact that the Allies are stuck down here in table number 4. It's going to be really hard for them to have a good result. You're going to have a lot of factors, and they're running a risk here. So kind of betting on the fact that the Allies can't concentrate to do an effective counterattack anywhere. But we do see use 2 Panzer Grenadier divisions to kind of pin the rear of our units here. This way they can't move. You can't move from Zoc to Zoc if you don't have enough movement points. This guy ironically does. All these guys do, but now this guy, well, he could probably slip here. Well, no, they got 5 now, and still that's enough to move 1 hex. So we'll see how that plays out. I mean, the British motorized units can move 1 hex even if it's Zoc to Zoc. The French unit, well, the only French unit is immobilized. Well, these guys are immobilized. Well, not these guys. There we go. Interesting. We got our French motorized brigades. They're going to be able to move too. So they're going to try and sneak out. So we do have the Germans forming 2 lines. Well, first off, we do see that, and I put these to mark their German control. But these guys did do the overrun and then moved units through Calais and Dunkirk to assume control. And then moved up as far as they could. I thought at first I'd defend behind the Somme, but then the French can, there's no counterattack coming, and then the French or the Allies could defend against the Somme. So let's breach this river line. There's lots of river lines, so let's, the more we can breach, the better. And potentially threaten coming around here. We're going to see, I forgot to move this guy, but he does move here. So you got 2 Panzer divisions. They could go on quite a trip here. So again, they can probably fall back to this river line here. But the problem is now they have a scarcity of units. These guys, I don't know if they can come around the corner fast enough. We'll see. Okay, so that's the mech move. And first they thought over aggressive, but then when you look at this and the fact they're on combat table 4, and I purposely built a solid line of units, so we can't have units moving 1 hex. There's some units here could move Zoc to Zoc to mess things up. So it's a pretty solid line here. They're not concentrated. Probably won't be doing any overruns, but there's not many overrun targets here. So next turn it's going to be, well, we'll see how the Allies respond here. And then these guys, they'll try and leak through the lines. I don't know. But then this infantry, they basically have to start reducing all of these units and getting rid of them. Meanwhile, down here, just hold the line here. So, and we'll see in the air interdiction. Got a few air units left for air interdiction, I think 4. And it's turn 2 now, so it's only 2 MP. So it's normal rules to move in. So they are not as effective as they were on the first turn. And speaking of which, let's take a look at the German air interdiction placement, which may or may not be good either. Yeah, I'm not very creative here. And they could start railing units too, but if anything, these guys just want to slow them down. Don't want this horde of infantry to come up here, because if all these infantry units started coming here, and then you put 4 units in here that form battle groups, that's going to delay the Germans. By turn 7, they have to take Paris and successfully roll the die to get Vichy in place. So right now, with all these Brits still on the board, the modifier is still too high. So these guys have to be destroyed, and Paris has to be taken. And we're turn 2 now. Next turn is turn 3. So kind of with the French, with the Allies, we're going to land. Actually, there are our units we could stash in Paris. The British reinforcements, or any British unit. If you had 4 8-10s in Paris, holy smoke. That means it could last 3 turns, which we kind of saw with Warsaw, because first turn they're all reduced, but then you can combine them, and then second turn they're reduced, and then the third turn they can be destroyed. So that's 3 turns before the Germans can get into Paris, and if they get into it on turn 7, it turns into a crapshoot, depending on how many Brits are left on the board to modify the die roll. So Germans are making good progress, but it's by far, with the 7-turn limit, I think that's what happened historically, 7 weeks. I'll have to look that up. They may not pull it off. So actually this follows close to, well, the Eben and Amel failed, okay? But the Germans did blow through the Ardennes. We did have the artificial move up to the dial line here, and then they did perform the sickle cut. And of course the big difference this game from real life is nobody paused the Panzers before the coast here. So these units truly are cut off. I looked at emergency transport. It still has to be from a port. So they can't be taken off a regular coastal hex. All emergency transport does is limits your range to 4 because you're allowed to move to a port and then move in the sea movement, which I could have done. Dunkirk, 1, 2, there it is. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. So Dunkirk would have worked, but nope. I guess Guderian was in charge, or Rommel in the 7th Panzer just ignored the orders and went for it. So there we are. That is the German week 2 turn, and we're going to move in now to the Allied response. And again, mainly on the defensive, I think. Their strategy now is to delay as much as possible, or if possible, keep the Germans out of Paris. If they can keep the Germans out of Paris and or prevent Vichy from forming, keep him out long enough to prevent a good Vichy die roll. And well, let's see, they're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That'd be a +2. So yeah, it could come down to a crapshoot there. I think you got to roll a 1 to 5, and with a +2, you got to roll a 1 to 3. So it's a 50-50 shot after these guys are destroyed potentially. So if it's just down one turn, they take it on turn 7. It's 1, 2, 3 to Vichy, and 4, 5, 6 no Vichy. Then the game boils down to a die roll. But you got to get it there first. So we'll see. We'll see. The Germans are threatening to go to the races here, and their infantry is slowly moving up, and that's going to be the power to do things. These infantry, though, are going to be trying to reduce this as fast as possible. All right, that's a wrap. Comments? I am actually enjoying the game. Any game that kind of follows history, that's a good sign. I'm not saying that's great. And the system, so far, as I'm beginning to understand it, seems pretty workable. And here we're just doing the ground combat. There's a whole layer of strategic to this, all of World War II. I'm pretty excited. This gives me both things. Gives me the strategic, obviously, but it also gets you down to the operational level with the divisions, which I find interesting. I'm not knocking other games, but the classic Third Reich is at a higher level than this, and some of the more recent stuff, I'm actually looking at my Axis Empires Ultimate Edition box. Look forward to getting into that. But those games aren't going to give me that old-fashioned, and this is just, I'm an old grognard, old-fashioned just, maneuvering large quantities of units, kind of in an operational sense, which is no problem. It's just different games, different strokes. And so it's interesting. This game can meld both the strategic and the operational. Keep playing and see how that works out. I can imagine a full campaign game is pretty wild, pretty extensive. So anyway, we'll stop the recording here, and we will see you at the next recording for the Allied response to the German sickle cut and pressuring Paris. So thanks for listening.